What's going on, my babies? Welcome back to another episode of The Spiritual Word. As always, I apologize for any noises in the background in advance and anything of that nature. And before I start these, I like to start these off with a disclaimer by stating that these are for entertainment purposes only. Always do your own research to come to your own conclusions, to have your answers, to make your own decisions. And I believe in your ability to do so and to be your own person. And for my new people, I have an audio version of the podcast and a video version of the podcast. Audio version you can find on any streaming platform where you can find any podcasts. And the video version you can find on YouTube. They're both named The Spiritual Word. I'm your host, Jackie. I upload Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Mountain Time. If science, psychology, spirituality, self-help, and philosophy are things that you're interested in, then I recommend subbing because those are the main things that I talk about. Sorry. And Jesus. So as my returning babies know, we're reading Start Where You Are so we can finish this book together. And we only have like 4 or 5 more chapters left. And all of the episodes, or all of the chapters, we've done an episode on. So if you want to go back and watch those, you can, but we're almost done with this book. So let's get into chapter 18. Taking responsibility for your own actions. I'm gonna get beat up this episode, but we digress. I digress. What really happens? I'm already messing up. Bear with me. My reading was not the highest. I didn't go to college. What happens? What really helps another person anyway? What really causes things to evolve in some kind of natural, spontaneous way? The next slogan provides some direction, each beginning with the word don't. I like to call them the naked truth slogans. Taking responsibility for your own actions in another way is another way of talking about bodhicitta, awakening bodhicitta, because it's a part of taking responsibility. Because a part of taking responsibility is the quality of being able to see things very clearly. Apart from taking responsibility is gentleness, and it goes along with not judging, or calling things right or wrong, good or bad, but looking gently and honestly at yourself. Finally, there's this ability to keep going forward. It's described before letting go, but there's some sense at a personal level that it's a personal level, it's that you can just keep going, but you're not completely overwhelmed by this identity of winner and loser, the abuser and abused, the good and the bad guy. You see what you do as clearly, as compassionately as you can, then go on. As you can and then go on. The next month is always fresh and open. You don't have to get frozen in the identity of any kind. A Gary Larson cartoon shows 2 Martians who had been hiding under a rock. They've set up a mirror on the side of the path in front of the rocks, down which are walking a man and a woman. And the one Martian goes to the other. Let's see if it attacks its own image. It seems that we do attack our own image continuously. And usually that image appears to be out there. We blame men, or we want to blame women, or we want to blame white people, or black people, or we want to blame politicians, or the police, but we want to blame somebody. There's a tendency to always put it out there, even if out there is our own body, instead of working with it. There's a tendency to struggle against. As a result, we become alienated. Then we take the wrong medicine for our illness by armoring ourselves in different ways and somehow not getting back to the soft spot. So today's slogan represents great expose. The first one, don't talk about injured limbs In other words, don't talk about other people's defects. We all get the same kind of satisfaction when we're all sitting around the table discussing Mortar's bad breath. Not only that, he has dandruff. And not only that, he laughs funny. And not only that, he's stupid. There's this particular security that we get out of talking about other people's defects. Sometimes we sugarcoat and pretend that we're not really doing it. We say things like, "Hi there, did you know Juanita steals?" Then we say, "Oh no, I shouldn't have said that. Excuse me, that was really unkind of me for me to say that. I won't say that anymore." We like to go on, but instead we say just enough to get people against Juanita, but not enough for them to disapprove of her slander, but not enough for them to disapprove of us for slandering her. There's this don't ponder on others. This is talking about putting others down to build yourself up. Maybe you only do it mentally. After all, you don't usually say these things out loud because people would disapprove. But in your mind, you talk about the Mortimer. How you hate how he dresses, or how he walks, or how he stares coldly at you when you try to smile. You say, "Now this is enough. I've criticized the Mortimer since the day I arrived here. I'm going to try to make friends." But the Mortimer just meets your sunny false smile with a cold, icy stare. You continue to ponder on the Mortimer's awful ways and just sit there on the cushion, and you very seldom label it thinking or breathe it in. It doesn't occur to you to exchange yourself for the Mortimer, and you certainly don't feel grateful to him. Next is don't be so predictable. This, which has its own, which has also been translated to don't be so trustworthy. It's an interesting one. It's getting at how predictable we are, as somebody in the advertising world knows. They know exactly what to put on those billboards and those ads to make us buy their products. Even intelligent people like ourselves are sometimes magnetized by propaganda because we're so predictable. Particularly, we are the 100% predictable. In that if we don't like something, we'll run away to the other. If we don't like it, we'll spend quite a lot of time and effort trying to somehow eat it whole. If someone does something nice for you, you always remember, and you want to repay their kindness. But if someone hurts you, you remember for the rest of your life, and you want to get revenge in one way or another. That means the slogan, "Don't be predictable." Don't always react so predictably to pain and pleasure. Don't keep talking. Don't keep taking the wrong medicine for the illness. The next one is a very easy one to understand. Don't magline others. I think I read that right. Magline others. We put a lot of energy and time into gossip about others. Perhaps there's somebody, maybe just one person, that you have a problem with. Maybe it's Pearl, who is so pitiful. She's always feeling left out, and you find yourself reminded of your mother who's like that. Somehow Pearl and your mother become mixed up, and you find yourself continually irritated and disgusted by the pitifulness of Pearl. And it keeps triggering a lot of stuff in you. You don't have the slightest interest in actually getting to know Pearl and finding out what's going on there. You desire to communicate with Pearl and find out who she is Instead, there is some kind of satisfaction that you get from not liking her. Sorry, I just had to pause to switch mics because the other one was dying. You spend a lot of time and energy talking to yourself about how pitiful Pearl, or whoever it might be, horrible Horatio, Horatio, or a miserable Mortimer. The next one is "Don't wait in ambush." Yet another naked truth slogan. You have been taught that you should be a nice person, and on the other hand, you don't feel so nice. Maybe you know something about your husband that he doesn't know you know, and you keep it up your sleeves, waiting for the right moment to spring it on him. One day you're in the middle of a big argument, very heated, and he just insults you royally, and at that moment you bring out the ace down from your sleeve and really let him have it. It's called waiting to ambush. You are willing to be patient until just the right moment comes along, and then you let someone have it. This isn't the path of the warrior, this is the path of the coward. Not only do you want to win, you aren't even willing to communicate. The aspiration to communicate with another person is being able to listen and speak from the heart. Speaking from the heart is what changes our old stuck patterns. The next slogan, don't bring things to a painful point. In some way, saying the same thing. These are nuances of human tragedy, nuances of the tragic situation. I don't know how to read. Tragic, TRAGICOMIC situation in which we find ourselves. Don't bring things to a painful point is always saying don't humiliate people. We do all these things because we feel pain, because we feel hurt and separate. Instead, first make friends with the feelings. Then second, trying to communicate. We all have ways of keeping the us and them story solid and strong. That's what causes the pain on this earth, including the fact that the ecosystem is turned inside down. All that comes from people not making friends with themselves and never willing to communicate with one they consider to be the troublemaker. That's how we get caught in this battleground, this war zone. The next slogan is don't transfer the ox load to the cow. Let's say you're Juan's boss. When someone comes along that you find unpleasant and don't want to, you pass it on to Juan. You pass the burden onto someone else. It's a Greek myth about Atlantis. It's like a Greek myth about Atlantis. He was just walking along innocently and somebody goes, "Oh, Atlantis. Would you mind for a moment just holding the earth?" We do that. We don't like it. It doesn't occur to us to actually work with our feelings and communicate with the person who is asking us to do this. To somehow open up the situation and work in it. Hold on. We don't like it. It doesn't occur to us to actually work with the feelings and communicate with the other person who's asking us to do this. To somehow open up to the situation and work in an honest and fearless way on what's going on. Instead, we just hold our burdens to give to someone else and ask them to hold them. It's called passing the buck. The next slogan is don't act with a twist. It means don't be devious, but it's it's similar to those slogans about not eating poisonous foods, or not turning gods into demons. You're willing to drive all blame into oneself very publicly, so everyone will notice, because you want people to think well of you. Your motivation is to get others to think you're a great person, which is a twist. There's a person who's doing you wrong and you remember the Lojong teachings, but there's a twist. You don't say buzz off, Juanita, or anything harsh. You're this sweet person who wins everyone's admiration. But on the other side of this, that they have disliked Juanita more and are more for mistreating you. It's as if you set up Juanita to act like a saint. That's the idea of acting with a twist. There's all kinds of ways to get sweet revenge. Finally, don't seek others. Pain as the limbs of your own happiness. Hold on, what? Finally, don't seek others. Pain as a limb to your own happiness. Okay. Which is to say, don't seek others' pain as a way to get your happiness for yourself. We are glad when the troublemakers of our lives get hit by a truck or go bankrupt or anything of that nature. I have a few people in my life who fall into this category, and I'm amazed at how happy I am when one of them writes me a letter and tells me how badly things are going. Conversely, I feel haunted by the distaste when I hear things that are going well for them. There's still the memory of how they hurt me, and I wish they would just continue going down the hill and drop dead, painfully. That's how we seek others' pains as the limb to our own happiness. These slogans are curiously studied. These slogans are a curious study of the human species. They reveal that we need to be very honest about what we do. Though seeing these things, that we can begin to have a lot of compassion, because in studying ourselves, we're studying the whole human race. The monistic rules give us insight into what all these saintly monks and nuns were like at the time of the Buddha. There are like rules don't cover meat. There are rules like don't cover your meat with rice, so that the server will give you more meat, thinking you don't have any. Don't irritate your roommate on purpose to get the person to leave, so you'll have the room to yourself. These are actual rules, the code of the monks and nuns, coming from the time of the Buddha. All the cartoons in the world and all the funny movies are made out of what is particular groups of slogans saying. What this particular group of slogans is saying. When we are doing things like this, either we don't see it, or we do see it, and feel as though we've committed sin, so we either zone out, or make a big deal. I malign others. I am not fit to live on this earth. What a burden. The more I know myself, the more I see. I'm just continually gossiping. There's no hope for me. Oy vey. However, we can also just see what we're doing. Not only with honesty, but also with a sense of humor. And then keep going and not make a whole identity out of it. However, we're still left with the question, when I feel my worst, when I feel jealousy, or when I feel I need to get revenge, how do I give my best? The first step is to dive into the experience of feeling bad, make friends with that feeling. The next step is to learn how to communicate, with others, with the people who make you feel. Hold on. The next step is to learn to communicate with the people that you feel are causing you pain and misery. Not to learn to prove them wrong and not and yourself right, but how to communicate from the heart. This is a lifetime's journey, a profound one. It's not something that happens very quickly or easily. Okay, that was chapter 19. No, that was chapter 18, I'm sorry. And it was called Taking Responsibility for Your Own Actions. Ugh. I didn't realize that there's a lot of things that aren't really like open to you, or you're not open to them. Like, for example, the whole part of don't act with a twist. I think that touches home for me because I've always been told that like I'm helpful and that I'm nice and like I have a lot of wisdom and this and that and blah blah blah. And it always scared me to have malintentions for doing something. And for that reason, I never really believed in myself. And it's so funny because everybody else can see something in you and you have no idea that you have that. And yesterday I was in the car with my mom and dad driving home from my little nephew's graduation like food like dinner, and they were talking to each other, but it didn't sound like they were talking to each other. It sounded like they were yelling at each other. And it kind of made me giggle because of how serious they are, like as a human. And the more that I go about my days, the more I recognize that I'm not thinking as hard as I used to, and I'm not thinking as harshly as I used to. Like, I used to really judge a lot of people around me, especially if I didn't agree with what you're doing. But who's to say what you're doing is whatever? You know, like, only God can judge. That whole statement, that whole phrase, I really feel that to be true. And I had not necessarily like a God complex. I guess you could say that because I felt like I was judging a lot of people in my head. I would never say it out loud, but the more I felt judgment towards another person, the more I wanted to help the person instead of just sit there and bash the person. But at some point, um, I think I got really tired of carrying other people's weight for them. And I think I held other people's weight as a distraction for myself, like as a distraction to not hold the weight of my own life. And then finally, when I did hold the weight of my own life, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so heavy. And not to say that I'd never had any guidance, because I don't think that it's not that I didn't have guidance, it's that I didn't ask for guidance. But the people who naturally, intuitively knew that I needed guidance would come and be somebody who would listen to me. And because I have very few of those people in my life, I would just dump the whole thing on them. And now looking at that, that's not a good thing. You know what I mean? But at the time, you kind of like get whatever you're trying to get wherever you were trying to get it, if that makes sense. Like I was trying to get care from whoever would care for me. And even though those people that I'd get care from, like, I love them and they loved me, I don't think that that's right to, like, just dump something on somebody. And not that I dump a lot, but it feels that way, especially even if you just do it once. Like the whole gossip thing. I try my best to not talk about other people. I try my best to not talk about other people's lives. And the more that I've stopped doing it, the more I've noticed other people doing it, which I'm not gonna actually, you know what? I'm gonna call myself out because it makes me laugh because I'm noticing the right and wrongs, quotation marks, the right and wrongs that other people point out. And it makes me laugh because they point out things that I would agree with as right and wrong. And I think that when that is happening, I recognize that that's happening and I try not to like feed into that joy. But I also don't try to like take that joy away from those other people when they're getting joy out of gossiping because they're just trying to get it any way that they can. They're not really aware of the fact that it's like a bad thing. You know what I mean? Like nobody teaches you how to live. Nobody teaches you your feelings and stuff like that. So I feel like it's a growing process. You know, you just learn through time. You learn through mistakes, and mistakes are not even mistakes. They're there to show you something. And the more mistakes, I've made a lot of mistakes. Like people talk about how they've made a lot of mistakes. No, like I've made a lot of mistakes and all over the grand scheme of life. I've made relationship mistakes. I've made family mistakes. I've made friend mistakes. I've made mistakes about myself. You know, made mistakes when it comes to driving. I've made mistakes when it comes to riding. I've made so many physical mistakes that, like, I can't help but be grateful for the mistakes that I make because I make so freaking many. And I feel like that's the only way that I learn. Like, I literally have to burn myself with the hot stove to figure out that it's hot. And I think that that's a good thing because I learn more, um, I don't want to say clearly, but like I learn to not make those mistakes again through the pain that it caused me the first time. And I used to beat myself up and be like, why am I so dumb? Why can't I just figure this out? Why? But I think everybody really doesn't have their shit together and they want to have their shit together. But wanting to have your shit together means you don't have your shit together. And just allowing your shit to be in shambles allows you for a lot more room to recognize that you're just as imperfect as everybody else. And that as long as you're trying, you're succeeding. And you don't even have to try, you just have to allow the things to work for you. And I think that was another thing that I had mistaken. I had mistaken the fact that I want everything to be so perfect and so beautiful and the way that I want it to be that I forget that life is gonna have its own definition and it's gonna have its own terms. Although I do believe in the magic of persuasion. Or not persuasion. What is it called when you have the ability to like manipulate your physical experience? Like if I chose to just be a-okay with never ever having money again and I just decided to go into a cave, that would be my life. And I think that that's a form of manipulation when it comes to your physical reality. Like the choices that you make, they impact your physical reality in a way that nothing else can. And I think that there's a level there. I know a lot of people, they don't believe in like magic and stuff like that and they don't believe in, and I don't even want to really call it magic because I don't think that it's magic, but I believe in the way that this science has taught us. You know what I mean? Like Buddhism and science, they really go hand in hand. And metaphysics really goes hand in hand with it as well. And the way that science has described this reality, it's whatever you believe to be true will be true for you. And I'm kind of just ranting at this point, so I feel like I should stop. So, anyways, I'm gonna stop right there. I know I literally cut myself off all the time, but I don't want to waste anybody's time. So, I'm gonna end this right here. We just finished chapter 18. Tomorrow we'll go into 19, and I think we only have like 4 chapters left. Maybe less. I think it might be less. I think it might be 3. Yeah, we only have 3 chapters left. And I don't think that I want to talk about this book because this book is so, like, everything that it talks about is not necessarily like half the shit that I talk about is stuff that you're not supposed to. Stuff that you're not supposed to be doing. Which kind of defeats the whole purpose of it. So, I am not going to talk about this book. I'm just going to read it and let you interpret it how you interpret it, because you know where you're starting and you know where you are. So, yeah, I hope that this was helpful in any way, shape, and form. Sorry I had to cut it midway through. My mic was dying, so I had to switch that out. And thanks for tuning in and tapping in. And before I go, just a little side note that I love you and I appreciate you for being here as always. And without me, there'd be no you. Without you, there'd be no me. And I'm glad that we both exist at the same time. So I'll see you in the next one.